Hey you guys, this is Makanor, and I just wanted to talk about fairy Otherkin misinformation regarding seasonal courts. A good bit of fairy Otherkin I encounter tend to classify themselves into seasonal courts like winter, summer, spring, and fall. And the thing is, this is misinformation because it's not been historically documented or accounted for. There's no sources referencing or even hinting at the possibility or idea of fairies being classified into these seasonal fairy courts. Now, literature-wise, William Butler Yeats in Irish Fairies and Folktales, he classified fairies into trooping fairies, which were large processions of fairies, and solitary fairies, which were basically mischievous fairies that worked solitary, like on their own. And in Middle English literature, we had Seelie and unseelie fairy courts. And with the Seelie, they were benevolent. With the unseelie, they were malevolent. And there was a kind of light dark duality going on with the Seelie and unseelie. The Seelie were often found around twilight, like early morn, if I got twilight right, as far as day-wise. And the unseelie were often found at night. The Seelie were basically forgiving and often sought out the help of human beings, and often rewarded human beings for their generosity and help, or kindness. Whereas the unseelie basically were malevolent and tormented or played pranks on human beings just for the sake of entertainment. But if they, however, found a human being that respected them enough and they took a liking to that human being, they would form a type of bond of companionship. Now, also, another thing about the classification of fairies was that it wasn't exactly good and evil in a sense for in all around terms. With French fairy tales, fairies with in French fairy tales or in French fairy tales they were classified as good and bad. In Welsh fairies like the AOC or AOCC, I don't know how to pronounce it. They weren't exactly completely good and exactly completely evil. However, getting back to the misinformation. This misinformation, I believe, comes from young adult literature, young adult fantasy literature, and if you're like, where are you getting this at? Where are you getting this at? Where are you getting this idea from? When I was in high school, I still do, I love reading young adult fantasy novels involving supernatural creatures, mythological creatures, folklore and all of that. And there was this one book about this girl who dated this guy who's this fairy from a summer court. And then there was a winter court fairy and whatnot. And that was a pretty good book. But that could be where some misinformation is from. People are reading these books like they read Twilight and they think that this applies to actual fairies and actual vampires when it doesn't. Or, as well, I've been looking around on the internet for seasonal fairy courts so I wouldn't be caught metaphorically with my pants down here in this video. And the only site I could see that came up about seasonal fairy courts was Weebly.com or .org, I'm not sure. But I really love the website. It's really, really well detailed. They go into detail about everything about fairies, whether it's elemental, seasonal, and their own personal accounts. However, one thing that people, I think people that are just viewing it just for a glance, what they need to pay attention to is if you go to the about me part or about part of the thing and the frequently asked questions, you'll see UPG. And the site owner explains the UPG is unverified personal gnosis, which is basically their personal take or their own personal interpretation or personal beliefs that aren't proven through research or aren't backed by any sources or whatsoever. They're basically, their own personal beliefs. based on their past life experiences, meditation, and whatnot. Now, I can respect this. I can respect this because at least this site owner admitted that this was that most of the website was UPG. However, it's misinformation if somebody who is fairy, or if somebody who's otherkin is awakening and they think that they're a fairy, or they think that they identify as a fairy kin type, and they look up quartz and they see this, and then they take this at face value without actually taking it with a grain of salt. And another thing, it kind of leads one to think about, what if a lot of other people did this whole UPG thing? But instead of actually admitting that it's UPG, they take it as exact fact, or they claim it as fact, and they declare it as that, and other people believe this is fact too. This can be a problem for younger otherkin, or newly awakened otherkin, because they research this stuff and they're being fed false information and lies and whatnot. And this only furthers my opinion that one should do research and should look into the mythology, the folklore, the information of one's kin type or stereotype to be well educated in it. So you don't let someone else tell you about your own kin type or your own stereotype, because you have to take what anyone says with a grain of salt. Unless they have some serious expertise and some degrees and diplomas and stuff in a certain field that is relevant to that, then I would take everything with a grain of salt. Personally speaking, I love the idea and the concept of seasonal fairy courts, and the idea that some fairies or some fae otherkin are more energetic at certain seasons and less energetic in other seasons. And I just love the concept of, seasonal fairy courts. It's just the fact that it's just not historically proven or cited or even referenced or mentioned, and people state it as fact. I mean, I would have no problem if people were like, okay, this is a recent thing, and we're gonna be making seasonal courts a thing starting now. This is Makanor. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you feel like it, share this video with any fairy otherkin groups that you know, or any fairy friends you know. Bye.